Having looked at a single line chart, we're now going to look at a multi-line chart. So we're going to remove that filter from our data and we're going to create a new object called by year. And by year is our data grouped by year. So a D3 group returns a map, a JavaScript map, where the key is the year and the values are the rest of the data associated with that year. When you iterate over a group in JavaScript, the keys are in value key order. If you come from Python, then you're used to key value, but JavaScript does it differently because it's JavaScript. So we'll just take a look at what this by year group order, and we're going to do it by iterating over value key, saying this is the value, this is the key. You know, there could be a song in that, but might look at that later. Anyway, we'll iterate over by year and we'll print it to the console. So we'll just launch the Fox. Just take a look at the documentation here. I put the link for the documentation for the JavaScript map here. If anyone wants to march through it, and best of luck to you if you do enjoy that sort of thing. You know, you have to an extent, but it's it's not easy stuff to go through. Okay, we'll open up the console here and blow it up a little to make it easier to see on the screen. Back we go to the editor, launch a terminal. In the terminal we type, as we always do, python-m http.server. Back to the Fox, reload the Fox. And here's our graph. It's a little messed up. That's okay, we'll fix that later. We are here to look at the console. So these are the values. There's 366 values in that array because 2012 is a leap year. 365 in the rest. And the values are as you'd expect. So that's how we iterate over a D3 group, which is a JavaScript map. Okay, back we go to tidy up our code, shut down the server for now, shut the terminal. We're going to get rid of our tested material here. Sometimes coding is a little like cooking, in that you need to clean as you go rather than leave it all in one lump. Okay, we'll adjust our subheadline here. It's still Seattle weather, but this is now precipitation by year 2012 to 2015. Canvas and plot stay the same. We have to change our scales. The Y scale is fine. The X scale we have to change because time doesn't repeat. You need a repeating value for your X scale for a multi-line. Therefore, we're going to use a linear scale, and instead of date, we're going to use day of year, because day of year repeats for every year. And we change the scale type from scale time to scale linear. The Y scale is fine. As I say, we're going to need a color scale so that we can distinguish the lines. And this is D3 scale ordinal. And just before we do that, we're going to create a convenience array called years, because that'll supply the keys for our color scale. Years is easy enough to create. We've created something like it before. Let years equal new set data map d maps to d dot year. So we'll use that years array now in our that years set, more correctly, in our domain. And for the range, we're going to use D3 Tableau tens. D3 has a number of categorical scales that you can use. We're going to use Tableau 10 here. I'll put a link in the notes to the official documentation on the D3 categorical scales. Use whichever one you like. I'm just using Tableau here because, you know, Tableau. It's very common data visualization tool, so maybe people feel more at home looking at the thing. So we just changed the comment here. This the make line function stays the same. The lines themselves, so we have to iterate over by year as we iterated over it earlier to examine what the data looks like. So we have by year for each value key. Again, the reverse of Python, value key rather than key value. And here we have plot append path, and our attribute D, which is the drawing attitude, that takes our make line function with value. Where we had data before, we're now using value because the value is different in each iteration for each line. We're going to give it a class. Always give it a class if you can, because you never know when you'll have to style something, and it's easier to have it and not to use it than the other way around. So our style here will be stroke, which is the line color, and here we use our color scale, and we can use key as the color scale parameter, because obviously key will be a year. That'll be fine. And the other style we add is fill none, because by default, for some reason, D3 tries to fill lines. Maybe it's something to do with paths, I don't know. Anyway, launch server again, take a look. Here's our server, over to the Fox, launch the Fox, and we don't see anything. Okay, something's gone wrong. Something goes wrong in this thing often. D is not defined. Line 32. So okay, we'll go back and have a look at line 32, see what's the matter. I didn't put in an arrowhead. Okay, so we're making progress now in that the scales are working, because if the scales weren't working, then the axes wouldn't have appeared. So we've made that much progress. Take a look at the paths. So where the scales don't work, you see not a number of values here, but there are numbers coming up here. So there should be a scale and there isn't. Why is that? Go back. Oh, here we are. Okay, I said not to change make line. I was wrong. The X scale takes day a year. It doesn't take date anymore. So that's why that didn't appear, and that's why it's appearing now. We have now succeeded in creating 4 differently colored lines, each showing the cumulative precipitation for that particular year. Those lines are a little thin. The thinness of a line is an aesthetic consideration, so we're just going to bump that up a little. The default line size in D3 is 1 pixel. We'll bump that up to 2 by using our CSS file, data line, which is the class that we so carefully created to be ready for something like this. And we're going to set the stroke width to 2 pixels. We come back. And there's just a bit more body in the lines now. They just, I hate to use the word pop, but they pop off the screen a little bit better than they did earlier. Okay, we're not seeing any tooltips, and the reason for that is because we have the wrong value in the X scale. We have date instead of day of year. We refresh that. Back to the Fox. Hover over a line, which is actually hovering over a point, and there we go. We see our tooltips. That we need to change the date format, because the previous date format didn't include year because it was all 2012. Now we have to include year. So we'll drop the day the %A, which represents the day, and we'll put in month, day, year, because that's a more useful datum to provide the user. And we'll just make the boxes a little wider. We'll go out to 200 pixels. And there's a formatting error. Back we go to the code. And it looks like I have one percent sign too many. Okay, that's easy fixed. And here now are our tooltips appearing correctly. This only leaves us now with one thing to do, which is to apply labels to our lines. There's two ways of doing that. One is you can create a legend, but it's better if you can attach the labels to the actual lines, because the user doesn't have to go over and back to connect a legend. Sometimes you've no choice but to show a legend. In this case, we can place labels near the line, and that's what we're going to look at next. Here we are back in the editor, and we're going to create our legend line labels. So these aren't the plot labels aren't the only legends, not plot labels. The axis labels aren't the only labels anymore. So we'll change the comment because we like to be neat and accurate. And we're going to create the new labels here. We're going to call them line legend labels. And we're going to start off with line legend labels by appending a G for group division to plot. So once we've done that, we follow the same procedure that we always do when we're adding SVG elements in D3, where we select all, text in this case rather than circle, and then data. Data here takes by year instead of data. And then instead of CXCY for circles, we have XY parameters for text, and we also need to add two more that don't exist for circles. So our X and Y locations will be found using the X scale and Y scale. The fill we'll find using the color scale, and the text itself we have to find. So the question is, how do we locate these parameters? How do we locate a legend label at the end of these lines? Now, what happens is you iterate over by year, but where normally you'd iterate over value key, in this section in D3, the key is represented by D0 and the values by D1. That's for all these labels. The first element in there are two element array. The first element is the key and the second is the value. I don't know why. That's how it works. So if our key is D0, then key is what we want for text, because that's the year. We want to show the year. The colors are relying on years, so we use D0, the key, as our color scale. X scale is more complicated. If we want the last X value, we need the maximum X value, because the last X value must be the maximum X value. So we use D3 max. Our data is D1 and our accessor function is DD of year. And we do the same in Y scale, because it's a cumulative scale. The last Y value will also be the maximum Y value. So that's what we do here. We use D3 max for both the X and Y scales, and we hope that this will work out. So as I say, it is complicated, but it is what it is. So we're going to launch our server, we're going to launch the Fox, and we're going to hope that this works. Spend a lot of time hoping with D3. Okay, we have good news and bad news. The good news is that it works. The bad news is that it doesn't work that well, but this is fixable, right? so that what we do here is we expand our right hand margin, and this is the reason that we have margin top, left, bottom, right, so that we can make little fixes to the plot like this, and now we can see our labels on the plot proper rather than they being lost. Now you notice that they're a little too tight to the margin, to the end of the line, so that we could add 5, say, to the x value here, but there's a more convenient function which is a dy dx attribute. Here's dx because we're moving it a little. So dy dx comes from calculus, which means a very small number on the x-axis, and here we can just nudge the labels a little to the right because that's all really that we want to do. They just need that little nudge, and to use a dx attribute is a little bit of a neater way of doing it. Now, there is a problem with the overlapping labels there at the top. We're going to look later on how they can be separated, but that's a higher level event. In the meantime, this is just going to have to do. Find another data set with that you can use for multi-lines, practice, see how you get on. It's the only way to learn. And then when we come back next week, we're going to look at bar charts. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the videos. Live long and prosper.